William Lane Craig is one of the most formidable defenders of the Christian faith today. He has debated Sam Harris, Richard Dawkins, Christopher Hitchens, and many more. In this video, he presents 4 arguments for the existence of God that atheists have never been able to refute. It may be one of the clearest and most compelling presentations you'll ever hear. I'll offer 2 short insights later in this video that I believe will help you grasp this truth more fully. Whether you're an atheist, a Christian, or someone simply searching for more answers, I hope this video brings you one step closer to the reality of God's existence. I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments after you watch.
Number 1, the cosmological argument. The question of why anything at all exists is the most profound question of philosophy. Typically, atheists have answered this question by saying that the universe is just eternal and uncaused. But there are good reasons, both philosophically and scientifically, to think that the universe began to exist. Philosophically, the idea of an infinite past seems absurd. If the universe never began to exist, that means that the number of past events in the history of the universe is infinite. But mathematicians recognize that the existence of an actually infinite number of things leads to self-contradictions. For example, what is infinity minus infinity? Well, mathematically, you get self-contradictory answers. Since past events are not just ideas, but are real, the number of past events must be finite. Therefore, the series of past events can't go back forever. Rather, the universe must have begun to exist. In one of the most startling developments of modern science, we now have pretty strong evidence that the universe is not eternal in the past, but had an absolute beginning about 13 billion years ago in a cataclysmic event known as the Big Bang. What makes the Big Bang so startling is that it represents the origin of the universe from literally nothing. For all matter and energy, even physical space and time themselves, came into being at the Big Bang. Now, this puts the atheist in a very awkward position. As Anthony Kenny of Oxford University urges, a proponent of the Big Bang theory, at least if he is an atheist, must believe that the universe came from nothing and by nothing. But surely that doesn't make sense. Out of nothing, nothing comes. So why does the universe exist instead of just nothing? Where did it come from? There must have been a cause which brought the universe into being. Now, as the cause of space and time, this being must be an uncaused, timeless, spaceless, immaterial being of unfathomable power. Moreover, it must be personal as well. Why? Because the cause must be beyond space and time. Therefore, it cannot be physical or material. Therefore, it follows that the cause of the universe is a transcendent, intelligent mind. Thus, the cosmological argument gives us a personal creator of the universe. 2, the teleological argument. In recent decades, scientists have been stunned by the discovery that the initial conditions of the Big Bang were fine-tuned for the existence of intelligent life with a precision and delicacy that literally defy human comprehension. This fine-tuning is of 2 sorts. First, when the laws of nature are expressed as mathematical equations, you find appearing in them certain constants, like the gravitational constant. These constants are not determined by the laws of nature. The laws of nature are consistent with a wide range of values for these constants. Second, in addition to these constants, there are certain arbitrary quantities put in as initial conditions on which the laws of nature operate. For example, the amount of entropy, or the balance between matter and antimatter in the universe. Now, all of these constants and quantities fall into an extraordinarily narrow range of life-permitting values. Were these constants or quantities to be altered by less than a hair's breadth, the balance would be destroyed and life would not exist.
Atheists and many scientists admit that the universe had a beginning, yet some still claim that it came by nothing and from nothing, an idea that collapses under its own weight. Nothing cannot cause something. The more we study the universe, the clearer it becomes that its laws are precisely calibrated for life in ways that defy comprehension. Take gravity, for example. It is tuned with exact precision for stars, planets, and life to exist. If the calculations are off by even the tiniest amount, everything, including you and me, would cease to exist. The odds of that happening by chance are essentially zero. You would have a better chance of being dealt pocket aces a million times in a row than the universe landing on perfect conditions for life. Therefore, the fine-tuning argument shows that a personal creator, God himself, is the best explanation for the universe.
Now, there are three possible explanations of this remarkable fine-tuning: physical necessity, chance, or design. Now, it can't be due to physical necessity because the constants and quantities are independent of the laws of nature. In fact, string theory predicts that there are around 10 to the 500th power different possible universes consistent with nature's laws. So could the fine-tuning be due to chance? Well, the problem with this alternative is that the odds against the fine-tunings occurring by accident are so incomprehensibly great that they cannot be reasonably faced. The probability that all the constants and quantities would fall by chance alone into the infinitesimal life-permitting range is vanishingly small. We now know that life-prohibiting universes are vastly more probable than any life-permitting universe. So if the universe were the product of chance, the odds are overwhelming that it would be life-prohibiting. In order to rescue the alternative of chance, its proponents have therefore been forced to resort to a radical metaphysical hypothesis, namely that there exists an infinite number of randomly ordered, undetectable universes composing a sort of world ensemble or multiverse of which our universe is but a part. Somewhere in this infinite world ensemble, finely tuned universes will appear by chance alone, and we happen to be one such world. Now, wholly apart from the fact that there's no independent evidence that such a world ensemble even exists, the hypothesis faces a devastating objection. Namely, if our universe is just a random member of an infinite world ensemble, then it is overwhelmingly more probable that we should be observing a much different universe than what we in fact observe. Roger Penrose has calculated that it is inconceivably more probable that our solar system should suddenly form through a random collision of particles than that a finely tuned universe should exist. So, if our universe were just a random member of a world ensemble, it is inconceivably more probable that we should be observing an orderly region no larger than our solar system. Observable universes like those are simply much more plenteous in the world ensemble than finely tuned worlds like ours, and therefore ought to be observed by us. Since we do not have such observations, that fact strongly disconfirms the multiverse hypothesis. On atheism, at least, then, it is highly probable that there is no world ensemble. The fine-tuning of the universe is therefore plausibly due neither to physical necessity nor to chance. It therefore follows logically that the best explanation is design. Thus, the teleological argument gives us an intelligent designer of the cosmos. 3, the moral argument. If God does not exist, then objective moral values do not exist. By objective moral values, I mean moral values which are valid and binding, whether we believe in them or not. Many theists and atheists agree that if God does not exist, then moral values are not objective in this way. Michael Ruse, a noted philosopher of science, explains, the position of the modern evolutionist is that morality is a biological adaptation, no less than our hands and feet and teeth. Considered as a rationally justifiable set of claims about an objective something, ethics is illusory. I appreciate that when somebody says, "Love thy neighbor as thyself," they think they are referring above and beyond themselves. Nevertheless, such reference is truly without foundation. Morality is just an aid to survival and reproduction, and any deeper meaning is illusory. Like Professor Ruse, I just don't see any reason to think that in the absence of God, the morality which has emerged among these imperfectly evolved primates we call Homo sapiens is objective. And here Mr. Hitchens seems to agree with me. He says moral values are just innate predispositions ingrained into us by evolution. Such predispositions, he says, are inevitable for any animal endowed with social instincts. On the atheistic view, then, an action like is not socially advantageous, and so in the course of human development has become taboo. But that does absolutely nothing to prove that is really morally wrong. On the atheistic view, there's nothing really wrong with someone. But the problem is that objective values do exist, and deep down we all know it. In moral experience, we apprehend a realm of objective moral goods and evils. Actions like cruelty and child abuse aren't just socially unacceptable behavior, they're moral abominations. Some things, at least, are really wrong. Similarly, love, equality, and self-sacrifice are really good, but then it follows logically and necessarily that God exists.
If atheism is true, morality is nothing more than a survival instinct, an illusion created by evolution to help us cooperate and survive as a species. But if that is all morality is, then acts like murder or child abuse are not truly evil. They are only seen as socially unacceptable. It would be like wearing mismatched socks, unfashionable but not actually wrong. Yet deep down inside we know that is not true. Yet we all recognize that some things are genuinely and objectively wrong in every time, place, and culture. God has created us in His image and has written His moral law on our hearts. This kind of moral truth cannot come from evolution, chance, or human opinion. Objective moral values do exist, and these values point to an objective moral lawgiver who is God.
Number 4, the resurrection of Jesus. The historical person, Jesus of Nazareth, was a remarkable individual. Historians have reached something of a consensus that the historical Jesus came on the scene with an unprecedented sense of divine authority, the authority to stand and speak in God's place. He claimed that in himself the kingdom of God had come, and as visible demonstrations of this fact, he carried out a ministry of miracle working and exorcisms. But the supreme confirmation of his claim was his resurrection from the dead. If Jesus did rise from the dead, then it would seem that we have a divine miracle on our hands, and thus evidence for the existence of God.
Craig ends with the greatest evidence of all, the resurrection of Jesus Christ. The empty tomb, the eyewitnesses, the unstoppable rise of Christianity stands as history's clearest and loudest declaration that Jesus is truly God. Since Jesus walked out of the grave, atheism collapses and the reality of God stands proven forever. This is not myth or blind faith. It is truth grounded in history and reason. The resurrection is God's proclamation to a doubting world, and it demands a response. Jesus is not just a teacher or a moral example. He is God in the flesh, and the only question left is, will you believe? If you like this content, click on one of the next 2 videos to see more like this. Until the next one, this was your Truth Unleashed.